That too. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bellingham City Council's evening meeting. I'd like to first make an announcement. On Monday, July 10th of this year, 2017, at 7 o'clock here in the Council Chambers, the City Council will host a public hearing on amendments to the Cordata Neighborhood Plan. Would you now please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
April Barker.
Here.
Dan Hamill.
Here.
Gene Knutson.
Here.
Michael Lillequist.
Here.
Roxanne Murphy.
Here.
Pinky Vargas.
Here.
Terry Borneman.
Here.
Okay, this evening, as usual, we start off with any public hearings we have, and we do indeed have one public hearing this evening. It's a public hearing to consider a resolution asking Bellingham residents to decline to sign Initiative 1552, which is now gathering signatures. An organization and individuals are working to gather signatures to add Initiative 1552 to the 2017 Washington State ballot. The ballot title for this initiative states that this measure would override state local protections against gender identity discrimination in certain public accommodation facilities, require that public schools restrict access to some facilities based on sex at birth, and allow related lawsuits against schools. The attached resolution in our packet asks our committee members to decline to sign this Initiative 1552. And if enough signatures are gathered so it does get on the ballot, we're asking people, if we pass this resolution, to please vote no on 1552. This public hearing tonight provides an opportunity for testimony for or against this resolution, and there are people signed up, and I'll get that sign-up sheet. Actually, Terry, can you get a sign-up sheet? But before we begin, how shall we introduce this? Councilmember Murphy.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'd just love to start by saying Happy Pride Month. So I think it's completely fitting then that we would bring forth this resolution. I started reading about this about a month ago and my skin started to crawl. I'm a member of the Nooksack Indian tribe, and I just think there are too many similarities between what goes on with attempts to oppress and exterminate our people of color, and what goes on with continuing to try to hurt our LGBTQ community. That's exactly what makes my skin crawl. So, for anyone who is tuning in and hasn't become familiar with this initiative, it's basically allowing, asking Washington state voters to support something that would allow businesses to ban transgender people from using bathrooms, and then also allowing schools to offer that same sort of discrimination. And people should have the right to be who they are. So these are my opinions, but that's why I jumped at the opportunity to work with Washington Won't Discriminate to draft this resolution that you see before you. And I'm really anxious to hear what anybody thinks, pro, con, or against. And I thank you all for being here and for providing testimony.
Thank you. Any further comments before we begin? Okay, so there were 2 sign-up sheets, one for this public hearing and then another one for general public comment. We'll do that next. If you accidentally signed at a public hearing and you actually want to do public comment, we can just fix that on the fly, no problem. The first name signed up to speak on this public hearing is Dina Jensen. Would you please come forward? And after Dina, Chris Diley, please.
Good evening, council members. Dina Jensen, Birch Bay. I want to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on land that is the traditional territory of the Lummi and Nooksack peoples. May we nurture our relationship with our Coast Salish neighbors and the shared responsibilities to their homelands where we all reside today. I am speaking in support of the City Council approving the resolution asking Bellingham to decline to sign Initiative 1552. This initiative would clearly discriminate against our transgender friends, family, and community members and threaten school budgets in the process. The allegation that protecting transgender people from discrimination poses a safety issue has not been borne out in the more than 200 cities and 17 states with these same protections against discrimination. There has been no increase in public safety incidents reported as a result of these protections. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Many of you may not regularly attend these meetings. We have a rule, as you maybe it doesn't say it up there, but actually our rule is please don't applaud if you hear something you like, but similarly don't boo if you hear something you don't like. We'd like in this room to be a safe space, and a safe space actually means that we listen and, like I said, rather than react. So I understand the sincerity of your applause, but if the next person says something you like or don't like, please remain quiet. Thank you for understanding. Chris, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and give your comments.
Okay, my name is Chris Diley, and I'm homeless. And mine is pretty brief as far as the transgender in the bathrooms. I read it online today, and my thought was just when I was about 19 years old, I traveled backpacked over to Europe and North Africa, and when I was over there in the youth hostels in France and various places, they were like co-ed bathrooms for like men and women. You know, young men and women, like totally naked in the shower rooms, and they had no problem at all with that, and they were like totally casual. And I was kind of taken aback at first, but it was all right. It was just the casual approach, and nobody had a problem, and nobody was like, oh God, you know, we're at risk of being victimized sexually or sexual predators. I guess somehow they've been able to deal with it for however many centuries that they've been doing it. So if that adds any sort of like medium voice to it, maybe that's helpful. And my other point is just very quickly is I have experienced like discrimination within Alcoholics Anonymous when I first got sober in 1985 because I was bisexual and I didn't know what my true sexual orientation was. I worked the steps formally with a sponsor, and this is a little bit controversial to talk about, but I need to because I think it's helpful. But after I worked the steps formally, and I didn't. And I still consider myself bisexual, which in a sense was saying that I didn't believe that homosexuality was against God's will. I was actually attacked in the meetings because that was not kosher, in the meetings. And what they have in AA is special interest groups for gay people. And to me, what that was that the gay people would be in the meetings so that the real AA members could point to them and say, that's not real AA. Those are the gay people doing their thing. But, over here, it's not like that. So I tried to be open and honest in the meetings. And I was actually physically attacked by a biker in one of the meetings in Anchorage there. He physically pulled me up out of my chair and tried to drag me out of the meeting because I was simply sharing about being gay and in relation to my alcoholism. And the people there thought that was a woman that worked at the intergroup office said he acted appropriately because that's how a man should react to another gay man, with violence. And they actually thought that was appropriate. And so in each group is autonomous, so AA actually allows for that to happen. The abuse that I suffered there in AA actually, even though It's very open and inclusive, AA. That's what you first hear when you come into AA. There's actually things that actually support fascism within AA. I've read it and I've studied it, and I know this. So that's where they have the ability to abuse people. So people that are gay, and I came in after I had attempted suicide in 1985, so I was deeply troubled. And with 1 year sobriety, I almost attempted suicide again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. The next person up is Paul Moore, followed by L.K. Langley. And by the way, when you do hear the first alarm go off, that's a 30-second warning. You don't need to wrap up. You don't need to stop right away, but you should start wrapping up. So again, is Paul Moore here? Okay, go ahead, Paul. Come on down. And after Paul will be L.K. Langley and then Rhiannon Bardsley.
Paul Moore, living in Bellingham. I urge the City Council to pass the resolution opposing I-1552. I-1552 wants to amend RCW 28A.640 to provide separate restrooms, changing rooms, and such to transgendered persons. I find that to be similar to the separate but equal attitude that I remember from my early years growing up in the South. Separate, yes. Equal, no. The message was clear. You are subnormal and do not deserve respect or even manners. Talk about creating significant risk of embarrassment, shame, emotional harm, or psychological injury. My parents taught all of us children to have manners, be respectful, and understand that everybody is unique in their own way. I pass those same lessons along to my two boys. As our society matures, we have learned many things. Eradicating such disparaging notions as separate but equal was one such lesson. We're still working on getting rid of the negative attitudes like those that promote bullying. We need to continue to work on promoting manners and respect and not demonizing those whose individuality is different from what some believe it should be. I-1552 demonizes an entire class of people, people who want the same thing we all do, manners and respect. Respect for being an individual, the same way each and every one of us is an individual. Let's help our society continue to mature by saying no to the discrimination and disrespect put forth in I-1552. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Up next, L.K. Langley, followed by Rhiannon Bardsley, and then Dean Tuckerman.
Good evening, councilors, Mayor Linville. My name is L.K. Langley. I'm a resident of Bellingham and the parent of 2 children in our public schools here in town. Thank you, Councilmember Murphy, for bringing this resolution forward. I ask the City Council to support it and to encourage our community to decline to sign Initiative 1552. At its core, I-1552 seeks to deny transgender people their identities, their dignity, and really their humanity. The campaign supporting 1552 endeavors to do this by deploying the absolutely false narrative that respecting trans people's identities jeopardizes the safety of people who are not transgender. It exploits and manipulates the experiences of survivors of violence, particularly gender-based violence, while relying on norms that perpetuate both anti-trans violence and sexual violence against transgender and non-transgender people. Violence prevention professionals understand this, and there are numerous violence prevention organizations around the state that have come out in opposition to 1552. In considering this resolution, please be mindful of the reality that trans people often have very legitimate safety concerns ourselves when accessing gender-specific restrooms. In a 2015 survey with nearly 28,000 transgender respondents that was conducted in the U.S., 24% of respondents reported that someone had questioned or challenged their presence in a restroom just in the last year. And 1 in 8 were verbally harassed, physically assaulted, or sexually assaulted in a restroom in the last year. These survey results are in many ways reflective of my own experiences in Bellingham and elsewhere. As a non-binary trans person, I've been yelled at, aggressively questioned, and physically threatened when attempting to access public restrooms. And I know that my many privileges, among them my whiteness and my economic privilege, have buffered me from the ways that other people, particularly trans people of color, experience intersectional violence. I'm particularly troubled by 1552's direct attack on trans students in our public schools. Trans young people, like all young people, need to be seen, supported, and loved for who they really are. Transgender girls are girls, transgender boys are boys. I-1552 provides the opposite of this basic recognition and need for care. It puts a bounty on our transgender students who simply have the audacity to move through their schools with the same freedoms as their non-transgender peers. As trans advocates and our allies across the country are saying, initiatives like 1552 are at their core efforts to erase transgender people in our communities from public life. Please reject this attempted erasure, particularly at a time when trans people in our state are under attack. We need our elected leaders to state clearly and unequivocally that trans people are valued members of the Bellingham community exactly as we are. Please support this resolution and encourage our community to decline to sign 1552. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Rhiannon Bardsley is next, followed by Dean Tuckerman and then Lisa Page.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having us. So I come here today as a young-ish white woman and a individual who has been doing work with young people who are in crisis and extremely vulnerable for the last 22 years, and also as a parent of two young ladies who have special needs and one who has a disability. And so my primary concern for myself, for my children, and for the young people that I work with is safety. Bill 1552 was created out of fear and out of ignorance. It will only succeed in increasing fear, in increasing discrimination, and in increasing shame. Depression, it has been shown, studies show that depression and drug use increase in queer people when discriminatory laws are passed. Also, it has been shown that death by suicide happens at a younger age in communities where social stigma of queer folks exist. Our communities already have an abundance of equity issues that we need to tackle. 1552 only makes vulnerable youth and students more vulnerable. They deserve more than what 1552 has to offer them, and what they actually deserve is physical and emotional well-being and safety. This bill will not and does not provide that. It actually creates the opposite environment. So I just wanted to applaud the Councilwoman Murphy for bringing this forward, and all of the to bringing forward the decline to sign, and also to the rest of the council members who decide to vote in favor of it. Thank you again for your time and attention.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Dean Tuckerman is next, followed by Lisa Page, and then Brianna Reynolds. Dean, your turn.
I'm not losing those today.
Take your time, Dean.
Members of the council, it seems strange that the right wing keeps talking about getting government out of our lives, except in certain areas. It seems very strange. And this is ridiculous that they're putting this law on the books. It's absurd. Washington doesn't need it. No one needs it. And I think people should not sign it, and should actually refuse and tell other people not to sign it, including the city itself can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Up next is Lisa Page, followed by Brianna Reynolds, and then Xiaoying Wu.
Hello and thank you. My name is Lisa Page. I am the Queer Youth Project Coordinator at Northwest Youth Services. You may know that we serve homeless, at-risk, and runaway youth, but you may not know that we consider all queer youth to be at risk. This is because they are. While only about 7% of queer youth or youth identify as queer, roughly 30% of homeless youth identify as queer. Transgender people have a rate of suicide. By the time they're 25, 92% of them will have attempted or seriously contemplated suicide. The GLSEN survey that measures school climate from 2015 shows us that 75% of transgender youth feel unsafe at school. And in my work in our county with our youth, I can tell you that they feel fearful and they feel shameful. Even with the protocols mandated by the State Office of the Superintendent, youth are still treated unfairly, forced to use bathrooms that are inconsistent with their gender identity, and put in positions of further stigmatization. The reasons that our youth are at risk isn't because there's something broken with their identity, but because of the way that we as a society have treated them and the messages that we give them about their brokenness. By passing this resolution to decline to sign, you will send our youth here in Whatcom County a very clear signal that they have adults in power who are on their side. And I can tell you that that goes a long way. We know that after marriage equality was passed, youth suicides in the LGBTQ community dropped. So these laws may do nothing to protect cisgendered people, but it will go a long way towards protecting some of the most vulnerable people in our society. So please, thank you for considering this, and please pass this resolution.
Thank you. Brianna Reynolds, followed by
Mr. Michael. My name is Brianna.
Brianna.
Have you ever once in your life met a single person named Brianna?
I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry.
B-R-I-A-N-A. Have you ever seen that pronounced as anything other than Brianna? Frankly, sir, that's coming off as kind of transphobic. I was just going to say that my name is Brianna Reynolds. I work for local nonprofits. I have lived in Bellingham since I was 10, went to Seaham High School, Western, and I just wanted to ask you all to please continue, in some cases, the good work you're doing, and support legislature that actually continues to protect your constituents like me. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. Next up is Xiaoying Wu.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. My name is Xiaoying Wu. I'm a family physician. I've been in Bellingham for 20 years. And I should say I'm going to mention some information from the Academy of Family Physicians, but I'm not speaking as a representative. I'm not an officer in that organization. So last year at the Washington Academy of Family Physicians, we passed a resolution saying, essentially reaffirming our non-discriminatory values, and specifically speaking to the importance of protecting folks who are LGBTQ, folks who identify as transgender, and specifically the issue around these bathroom bills that keep cropping up. That same resolution was then forwarded to the National Academy and was adopted by the National Academy of Family Physicians. So I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of family physicians throughout the country are very, very much opposed to these bathroom bills for all the obvious discriminatory reasons, but also because they have very real health effects on our patients. And as physicians, we see the adverse health effects of discrimination on a really regular basis, and we see the risk that this kind of discrimination creates. I'll also mention that at our, at least at the Washington meeting, in a room of 130 physicians, there was actually no debate at all about the importance of affirming non-discrimination on any basis. And it's not often you get 130 physicians in a room and have no debate. So thank you for the opportunity to address you. And speaking for myself personally, I have some mixed feelings about having a governmental agency or group telling citizens what to do about signing initiatives. But I think the two speakers ago, I think the point is really very well made that when a significant body of power goes to bat for a disadvantaged group, it sends a very important message, which can be life-saving. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wu. There's no more people signed up to speak, but if you would like to speak, you can come forward now and state your name and comment on this resolution. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Larry.
Thank you, Michael.
can move surprisingly fast these days. Want to thank you for...
Larry, your name, please.
Oh,
Thank you.
yes, that would help. Larry Hildes, live just outside the Bellingham city limits, and we work in the city. I'm a civil rights lawyer here. Roxanne, I want to thank you very much for bringing this up and for putting this matter on the agenda. Several people have said things that are probably more articulate than what I'm going to say on the same point. But every time there's a major civil rights advance and the rights of trans people to use the bathroom that's appropriate for them, to them, is a major civil rights advance. Acknowledging that there are trans people at all was a major civil rights advance. There is always a push from some on the right wing to roll it back, and there is no good reason to roll it back. Nobody is threatening straight white men in the bathroom. Doesn't happen. But telling people that they don't have a right to be who they are makes a very important statement. And as was said at least twice, you all standing up for the people without power makes a very important statement. Justice requires that everybody be given equal access. For trans people, equal access is the bathroom that they identify as appropriate for them. This is happening society-wide. I'm sorry that that's dragging some people kicking and screaming. They need to get over it and move forward into the 21st century. This is a matter of basic justice. We ask you to move forward with declining to sign this and calling for others to decline to sign this initiative. And hopefully, this is the last time in Washington we have to address this issue. And with any luck, we won't be addressing it that much longer nationally. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Is anyone else who would like to come forward to speak? Come forward to state your name.
Yes, Eric Bostrom from Bellingham. I would like to propose something along these lines that would be kind of really forward-thinking and beyond where we've gone so far on this issue. See, I believe that transgenders and all people should have a right to be whatever they want to be. Everybody should have freedom. And one of the things that has not been addressed by, I don't think, one person so far is what about the right of the person who's in the bathroom, who's a woman or a man, who doesn't feel comfortable with the situation. It's not that they're against the person, it's just that they're for them. So here's what I would propose that would solve it for everyone, because what if we have a new category that comes along later, and then another category after that, and then another category after that? What happens then? Well, so how about this? How about single bathrooms everywhere, and you just go in and everybody's free? How about some freedom? Everybody gets their own bathroom. Huh? How about that? You say, well, it's not cost effective. Well, we spend so much time, even I noticed at the Bellingham City Council, on matters like this where we could be talking about affordable homes and solving the homeless problem, and we talk about so many of these things when we're not even going to be able to solve it in this room anyway because it's on the statewide ballot. So why don't we spend more time working on the real problems of Bellingham and get everybody their own bathroom? Huh? How about that? Now, that may not be real popular because then that doesn't force it on somebody else. You see, whatever solution it is, whether you're for the thing or against it, it's going to force somebody to do something they don't want to do. And you have to, if you're going to be honest, you have to admit that. You're going to be forcing somebody to do something. So how about real freedom? How about real equality? Everybody has their own bathroom. How can you be against that? And we could come up with the money by wasting less time on these issues. We'd free up other resources and time. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Is anyone else who would like to come forward and speak? Come forward and state your name, please.
Hi, thank you for having this really appreciate that you're considering it. My name is Karen Weil. I also live right outside of Bellingham, but do most of my business in Bellingham. I want to urge you to pass this resolution. I think it's extremely important. Civil rights make people uncomfortable. That was true in the 1960s, and it's true now. And I think that people need to be comfortable with allowing folks to use the bathroom that they choose. And just, we got used to black people drinking from the same water fountains. I've spoken to people in the South who were alive at that time, and it took a lot for them to get used to that. So I think we can get used to people using the bathroom that they're most comfortable with. It's not practical to try to always have a private bathroom for each person who needs it at that moment. Although in Europe, they have bathroom stalls that go all the way from floor to ceiling. And when you close the door, you are in an enclosed space and using the toilet of your choice in an enclosed space. I actually find it a little disappointing that we still have to have this discussion in 2017. I will tell you, I see it as a non-issue. During Northwest Folklife, which happened a little less than a month ago, in one of the concert venues, the bathrooms are marked as being open to everyone. So there's a group of stalls on, a whole bathroom that used to be a women's bathroom, and then a whole bathroom that used to be a men's bathroom. And I came out of one of the stalls, and there's this man standing, clearly a man, and standing there at one of the mirrors, washing his hands. And I was a little startled. And I looked at him, and he looked back at me, and then he left, and I went up and washed my hands. It's just get used to it. It's not like he's peeking in at me. He's just washing his hands. So, and at least I believe he was a man. He looked like a man, so, Again, I'm not always the most comfortable with it either, but I think it's the right thing to do. Let's just do it.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to come forward? Go ahead and come forward, Mark, and state your name.
Hello, my name is Mark Allen. I just want to say I wish that you do pass this resolution, because I feel that this initiative is quite toxic for the transgender community as well as the entire city and state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that probably concludes our public testimony. Okay, I'll go ahead and bring the public comment period to close and bring it back to the City Council for considerations and actions. Roxanne?
I'd like to move that we pass the resolution asking Bellingham residents to respectfully decline to sign Initiative 1552.
Second.
We have a motion before us to approve the resolution asking Bellingham to respectfully decline to sign Initiative 1552. Is there any discussion on this matter? Terry, Pinky, Dan.
Yeah, I am old enough to remember going down south and where there were certain areas in the restaurant that was colored only, certain bathrooms, certain whatever was colored and whites. And some of those folks, at times, people felt uncomfortable when it changed and black people came in to use the bathroom. Was that against their rights? Was it against their rights because somebody felt comfortable because a black man came in and used the restroom? They're uncomfortable, but it wasn't against their rights. That issue was raised in tonight. No, it's not against somebody's rights with that. I first had the experience of being in a restroom in 1970 when my then-to-be, before she was my sister-in-law, walks in the men's room. She was, first experience with the concept of we should have gender-neutral bathrooms. In Europe, that concept is pretty regular. It's not a big deal. This is a basic civil rights issue, the same as the ones that many of us have fought all of our lives. It's just one more step that keeps raising its ugly head over and over with different guises. So I'm definitely supporting this. I mean, it's just basic common sense that we support and protect our fellow citizens, our residents, our neighbors. It's just common sense that we do that.
Thank you.
I want to thank Councilmember Murphy as well for bringing this forward. We don't usually do this thing, but this kind of a thing, but I think this is vitally important. This is horrible discrimination. The people who originated this should be ashamed of themselves, really. This is an extremely vulnerable population, and we need to send a clear message. And that message is that we have your back, and we support you. You deserve better. Particularly our support and your dignity. 30 years ago, when I was going through all kinds of things in my own life, I used to go to a gay club and was adopted by a group of drag queens, some transgender, some not. And you went into whatever bathroom was available, men, women, whatever, it didn't matter. So 30 years ago, I got used to it. I'm accustomed to it, I don't care. But I am grateful for those drag queens because they accepted me at a time in my life that a lot of other people didn't. They taught me tolerance. They showed me how to have dignity when people were being disgraceful. And they also taught me how to be sassy to intolerance. And I am super grateful for all the things that they taught me about tolerance. And I am super grateful that they gave me a foundation 30 years ago that I build on every single day about our uniqueness and our acceptance. And I fully, wholeheartedly think this is atrocious that we are dealing with this in this day and age. So we have your back.
Dan?
1552 is, to me, is just straight up discrimination. I don't know how else one could characterize it. Protecting people's rights and dignity is something that that this council, that I value, and I think that this council values. So I wanted to thank Councilmember Murphy for bringing this forward, and I will be supporting this evening.
April?
Yeah, I think it's the irony of all the years of oppression of women, and now suddenly some, I'm assuming they're probably middle-class white men, really want to protect us in our restrooms. I wish they would put their energy to more appropriate things. So I am in full support. You know, I appreciate you, and this is one of the reasons why I'm just so thankful to be working with you on the council and to have you to look to on issues. You're always kind of you're way in front of it, which I think is really wonderful. So I appreciate you doing this, and I will be supporting it as well.
Roxanne, go ahead.
Just wanted to share a quick story of something I dealt with right in Bellingham. I was hearing in my fitness gym complaints from people, especially women, that there was a transgender woman that would sit by the showers. And she had a towel around her. She was fine, but she would sit there for quite a long time, and that people felt unsafe. And so I just started sitting with her in my towel. And I loved getting to know her. And I learned one really keen thing, and I started this rumor throughout that whole damn gym. The reason she sat there was because the sauna was too hot, but the steam from the showers helped her digestive and also congestive issues. So let her be healthy. Let anybody sit there for as long as they want to. And then that really started to change the whole issue. If we could just have a baseline understanding of people, we can continue to support people as people.
Gene, go ahead.
You know, April, a few weeks ago, you said nothing's easy up here. This is easy.
I'd like to say that, I think what's most important and what I am most proud of the United States is our ideals, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And our government should be supporting people's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And this is using government coercion in exactly the wrong direction to prevent protections, to enshrine discrimination, to stop schools from doing the right thing by their students. It's completely opposite of what I think the proper role of government is. So yes, people, please decline to sign. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the resolution ask the people of Bellingham to respectfully decline to sign Initiative 1552 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Please hold your applause. But Roxanne, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I think we're the first city in the state to pass this kind of resolution, and I really hope it'll set a precedent throughout the state. Nice to see.
People. Give me a break. We next move into our 15-minute public comment period. This is the time where we set aside 15 minutes to have public comment on important issues of the day, something which comes to mind. There are more people signed up that can speak in 15 minutes. I'd just like to check with the council. It looks like we have just over 2 pages of people who would like to speak. Shall we go ahead and go through the public comment period? This will take definitely more than 15 minutes, so let's go ahead and get started. The first person to speak is Mr. Christopher Diley again, called by Kevin Ernst and then Joseph McDonald.
Hi, my name is Christopher Diley, and this is on, first of all, is the affordable housing. I brought this up the last time I spoke a couple of weeks ago. The Western Front newspaper pointed out that the city council should have ordinances to have rent control here in Bellingham as a solution for homelessness. But I brought it up to them and I brought it up here that the Washington state law prohibits rent control in Washington, so it needs to be taken up on the state level. And I went to the Western Front and I talked to them personally, and they said, well, we need to do a story on that and make that clear then. They never did do a story. And my letters never get published there. Anyhow, I just want to make that point that it's against state law, and I wish that somebody would take the issue up on the state law while we have a Democratic governor, Jay Inslee, and address this issue. Because I'm the only one talking about it that I'm aware of. And my other thing is that yesterday, as far as the reintroduction of grizzlies into the Cascades here, a black bear yesterday up in Anchorage, Alaska, that's where I grew up, a black bear killed a teenager that was running in a race near Anchorage up there yesterday. And I went ahead and looked online, and let's see, there's been, up in Anchorage, there have been 3 bear attacks in a 2-year period on Rover's Run right there in Anchorage, where a young woman was mauled by a grizzly during a mountain bike race, then a runner was attacked, and then a bicyclist was mauled, all on Rover Run right there on the edge of Anchorage. Last year, a 10-year-old girl was critically injured just east of Vancouver up here in British Columbia on August 14th. The Canadian Press reported that, and she was attacked by a grizzly bear. I looked it up online to see if the Bellingham Herald had published that story, and they hadn't. And I hadn't known about it. I'm always looking for bear stories, and they hadn't done it. And that's very interesting that they didn't publish that story. That was right up here east of Vancouver, a 10-year-old girl attacked by a grizzly bear. We need to be aware of this. 4 grizzly attacks in British Columbia in 2 weeks, as reported by the CBC News in 2015. In 2015 in BC, there were 7 grizzly attacks and 5 black bear attacks. 8 months ago, there was 2 hiking guides that were mauled by a grizzly north of Sitka in Alaska. Last year, a grizzly killed a mountain biker 3 miles from the entrance to Glacier National Park. In August of 2015, a man was killed by a grizzly in Yellowstone National Park on Elephant Black Mountain. And with 30 seconds left, just to wrap that up, is the Cascadia Weekly pointed out that they had a story on this saying, oh, it's a good thing to bring the bears into the Cascades, the grizzlies, saying that the fear is the issue. We don't need to be afraid. Let fear stop us from doing that. It's not a matter of fear. It's a matter of facts. And they're whitewashing the issue, saying it's not a public safety issue. It is a public safety issue. and the bears will be killed by end up as roadkill as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Up next is Kevin Ernst, followed by Joseph McDonald, and then Stephen Jackson.
Thank you. I'll introduce myself since it's my first City Council meeting I've been to. My name is Kevin Ernst. I'm a letter carrier with the United States Postal Service, member of National Association of Letter Carriers, local branch 450. I'm a steward with out of the main office. I'm also a delegate to the Northwest Washington Central Labor Council, and I'm also on the pastoral council of my church, Sacred Heart Catholic Church, along with being the assistant high school youth minister and head of the altar server ministry. And I'm also a tenor in the Whatcom Chorale. I love Bellingham. I absolutely love Bellingham. Came here in 2009 to go to college, and I just fell in love with this community. I also happened to fall in love with my fiance, who I got engaged to June 4th at Whatcom Falls. Bellingham is a special place for me. It's where I became who I am. And as I, go forth wanting to get married and, plan my future, I'm looking at houses. I'm looking at, man, I want to live in Bellingham. I want to pay darn taxes to the city of Bellingham. And I can't find anywhere to live where I can afford in Bellingham. Right now, I live in a tiny apartment off of 32nd Street, but I want a home where I can take my future bride to be. And I want to raise kids in this community because I believe in what our community stands for, as we just saw 10 minutes ago. I realized, though, last week that this dream is partially selfish. I was strolling along on Sunset Drive. That's my route. And I was coming out of the RX shop, 300 East Sunset. And this fellow comes up and he has a change of address form. I recognized it. And he was like, hey, can you help me with this? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. And turns out that he couldn't afford to live where he was any longer. And so he had to put in a change of address to general delivery at the post office because he had to live in a motel. And I was like, oh, man, I don't know how to help you. So I did the only thing I know how to do in the moment, and I offered him, I was like, I'll do a little prayer for you. But then I heard about tonight, and I was like, I can do something. So I ask you, council members, and on behalf of that man, and everyone here who wants to live the dream and make Bellingham their home, please help us make housing affordable here in Bellingham. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Joseph McDonald is next, followed by Stephen Jackson and Elijah Morgan.
My name is Joseph McDonald, and I have a speech amendment. I would like to explain how you have broken your own rules in the past. Considering I was cut off in the middle of my speech last meeting, and I see the inconsistency of the enforcement of your rules, I just want to say I think it's ludicrous that I cannot ask for a city council candidate open forum at a city council meeting. I've seen in the past where people were invited to political rallies and the speaker was never contested. A matter of fact, it was the family night meeting, and if you look at the video coverage, you will see that it was not a parent inviting everyone to a PTA meeting. Your exercising of the rules imply that you are not a true and free democratic government. How can you represent a people of a free democracy when you don't allow them a chance to speak? Thank you, and God bless America while it's still here.
Thank you, Joseph. Stephen Jackson is next, followed by Elijah Morgan and Nathan Burton, or Barton, maybe.
Hi, my name is Stephen Jackson. I'm a Deputy Public Defender for Whatcom County and proudly serve as the Secretary of the Riveters Collective. But I'm here as a citizen of Bellingham. And I'm asking you to reject the jail use agreement that's before you today. I read the contract while taking a very slow train north from Vancouver this weekend, earlier this week. And what the contract doesn't account for is more beds for behavioral health services. Currently, we have 6 triage beds in the entire county, and that's unacceptable. The people I represent need more than 6 beds. A report that was released in October says that retrofitting the current jail would cost about $10 million, and we're considering building a new jail that's somewhere between $110 and $130 million. I'm in the current jail every day. I was in there today. And if we're dead set on spending $100 million, let's spend some of that money on behavioral health services. It would go a long way to serving the people that I represent every day. Those people, it would change their lives. It would change their lives. And then on top of that, we're paying for it largely through sales tax. And as you know, sales tax is a regressive tax. So not only do I represent people who are at the bottom threshold of our income and our tax bracket, but then it will be paid for by people who don't have a lot of money to begin with. So I would urge you to reject the jail use agreement once again. Let's take it slow. And then anecdotally, I'm just remembering, Skagit County is about to open up their big mega jail, and let's see how that goes. I've certainly heard from my friends down there that they are going to be seeing some unexpected results from that. So thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you, Stephen. Next is Elijah Morgan, followed by Nathan Burton, and then Dina Jensen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elijah Morgan. First of all, I'd like to thank the members of the council for hosting this event and for allowing us to have our public comment. I think this is vital in a healthy democracy to, get the people out here, hear our voices, and offer this opportunity for an open platform for anyone with concerns. I wanted to speak specifically today about something that I've seen happening throughout the 13 years that my family has lived in and around Bellingham. Both of my parents have been full-time employed the entire time I've lived here. I've grown up in Whatcom County. I live in Bellingham. I'm a Western graduate. I have a good paying job. My parents both have pretty well paying jobs, but it hasn't always been like that. I was considerably low income for most of my life until just recently, my parents as well. And the housing situation has become increasingly difficult over time, to the point that even now that my parents have finally, at the ages of my mother being 58, my father being 73, they finally entered the middle class after decades of living in Bellingham, living and working and paying taxes. They finally reached a healthy, middle class income. It's no longer becoming sustainable for them to rent in this city, and it's looking like it might not even be sustainable to rent in this county. I've had the opportunity to grow up in this beautiful city, in a place where we do things like, as was seen earlier, we respect all our individuals who live here. We care about the rights of one another. We care about our environment. We care about building a safe community. And the fact that I see people who have been working and struggling to survive and provide for their family, unable to afford even the most low quality of rentals in the city is just, it really breaks my heart. And the fact that I've seen at, for instance, this recent town hall on housing affordability, the amount of people who are impacted by easily changeable things like the rampant income discrimination in our county. For instance, my uncle who lived with us, he moved here from North Dakota to live with us. He became disabled while he was here after working. And finding a house in Bellingham became considerably more difficult with this income assistance that he was getting. He eventually got priced out of Bellingham. He moved into Linden. But even there, it became more and more difficult, to the point that my family was no longer able to help him. And even with this housing support that he was getting, he was not only priced out of Bellingham, he was priced out of the county, and the rampant income discrimination led to the point that he was actually forced to move back to North Dakota to live with his mother, who was sick and infirm. So I just wanted to discuss the importance of, I think, addressing this terrible crisis of housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Elijah. Up next is Nathan Burton. I'm sorry, I can't read that. And then Dina Jensen, followed by Everett Barton.
Yeah, it's Barton. That's my dad. And my name's Nathan Barton, and I've lived in Bellingham since I was 5. We moved here in '94, and mine is a story of our family. We didn't make it. My dad and I and my sister are still here in Bellingham, but my mom, my other sister, they had to move away. Our house was foreclosed in 2008. We lived in apartment rental units on the north side of town up until 2014, and then we finally we went and we bought a townhouse over by Barclay Village. Growing up in apartments was fine because I was a kid, but they were always, not well taken care of. Even to this day, I know people that live there now. They still have water damage and constant problems with them. But anyway, so yeah, seeing my family getting broken up by basically housing issues was pretty difficult, but I'm resilient, and I went to school here. I was committed to not leaving, but eventually it becomes too difficult, and most people like me that are young, that are out of college, unemployment rate for young people like me is about 50%. So we need a stable place to live, a stable job, somewhere where rent is affordable. And unfortunately, across the country, there's an affordability crisis. So I don't see Bellingham as anything special in particular, but I know that changes can be made because we are a pretty dynamic community that has been growing quite consistently. That we can force back, monopolizing people's incomes to go towards developers and builders and redistribute where it's needed. We can regulate against having huge amounts of property going towards high-rise commercial development and redistribute that to residential and infill, and so unfortunately I won't be able to see that take place, but maybe I can move back here in a couple of years. But I'm just one of many young people that has to evacuate, basically. And so yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nathan. Up next is Dina Jensen, followed by Everett Barton, and then Clint Lincoln.
Dina Jensen, Birch Bay. I urge the City Council and Mayor not to make a decision on any new jail facility before the report of the Vera Institute is given, after which a full needs assessment can be done regarding the jail. I believe that any claim of urgency regarding moving forward with a new facility is false. What is urgent is making all the necessary repairs and improvements to make our existing jail humane and safe, which it always should have been. It's been over a decade that we have been hearing about unsafe conditions at the jail. This dishonors us. The county executive sent me a June 15th email saying the administration is working on contracts and bid documents for repairs to our existing facility. Citizens and agencies should follow up to make sure these repairs are expedited and done in full. Also urgent is addressing the need for more medical and behavioral health services and beds, and for developing funding for these things that will help alleviate the need for bigger jail facilities. Yet another matter of urgency is facilitating public involvement in this process. All current documents and information should be posted on city and county websites. More public hearings should be held, and jail-related comments of citizens should be reviewed and posted. Beyond these urgent matters, we must thoughtfully take prompt action on the information we are gathering from the Vera Institute and the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force, and develop an agreement to create facilities and programs rooted in keeping and moving individuals out of the incarceration system and into successful lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. Everett Barton is next, followed by Clint Lincoln, and then Christina Gooden.
Hi, my name is Everett Barton, a 24-year resident, Puget neighborhood, and last spoke before you about 6 months ago about rent control. Even though it might be against state law or it's being forced by people who are in real estate who can control those issues, I do think it's important on a local level to try and devise a way of having rent control. And I'm heartened today to see that the millennials are stepping forward and making their situations known. My son has to evacuate just because he's going down to Portland for his girlfriend's education, but they would like to come back because Bellingham is dear to their hearts, and of course they want to be here. And I am being priced out. The next rent rise for me is going to be $810, and that's going to be beyond a HUD subsidy. And so I hope that I can figure out some way to stay in my apartment because I've got a piano. I don't want to move again. Anyway, and I'm also, I don't follow all of your allegiances, but I do catch wind of what this body is doing because I follow the Incarceration Reduction and Prevention Task Force pretty closely. And I want to commend you all for the drag chute you're providing for the thing that's going on. We have a big ship and we're just trying to steer it very so slowly to a different thing. We want to get the land sold and put the money back in the county coffers and repurpose for that land. If the county wants to give that land for the tiny homes that are coming for the homeless, that's one option. But the money needs to go back in. And the county executive and Rudd Brown were conflating the programs with the facility, and we don't need to do that. We have an option. It's not really clear that we have the ability to pursue it, but there's that South Campus of St. Joe's Hospital where the programs can go. The facility, this facility, is going to cost $10 million a floor, not the whole jail. That's what the county executive said, $10 million a floor. Well, let's get the floor started, one floor empty, and take pictures of it, and so we know it's going forward. The talk about plan to last is right now it's only talk. And you can see all about it on NW Citizen. Juliet Daniels is writing cogently about it. But if we have one of our members and activists recommended, no, we need to have pictures, and not just words, but pictures. So if we can get a commitment to have that first floor renovated, the prisoners can go out to Division Street or over to Wenatchee. Well, you get my drift. Thank you.
Thank you, Everett. Clint Lincoln is next, followed by Christina Good, and then Eric Lawrence.
Hi, Clint Lincoln, Bellingham resident, 37 years. I want to start by saying thank you for postponing the vote. Sounds like earlier today you decided to do that. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. At the County Council meeting on June 13th, I spoke to a couple employees of the Whatcom County Sheriff's Department, and I posed the question, whose job is it to manage the current jail? I was then informed that it is the Whatcom County Sheriff's Department's job to manage the current jail. So I asked why the admitted human rights issue of a current jail we have hasn't been fixed. The employees of the Sheriff's Department told me that their understanding is that the County Council will not provide the funds to fix it. It is my understanding that the County Council has been pushing to fix the current jail. So if the County Council wants to fix the current jail, but the employees of the Sheriff's Department believe that they don't, that means somewhere in the middle, someone is either being misinformed or fixing the jail is being avoided. In 2015, Sheriff Bill Elfo called the jail a liability issue and a human rights issue. It's been 2 years since then, and it's still not fixed. We have to fix the jail whether we build a new facility or not to avoid a lawsuit. This has been mismanagement on the part of administration. We should not trust this type of mismanagement to continue making decisions about our current facility. We should not trust this type of management in the planning of a new facility, and we should not trust this type of management to run any future facility. Chief of Corrections Wendy Jones was unable to know exactly how many convicted felons we have in the Whatcom County Jail because it is understaffed, they are overworked, and because the outdated system we have for currently keeping track of who is in our jail. This is mismanagement, and this should be addressed. I feel bad for all the councils that are having to deal with the decision of this process because the entire process has been, quote, out of order. Being asked to make a decision on this type of mess is also mismanagement, and we must hold this type of management accountable. I would also like there to be a public hearing on the location of any future facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Clint. Christina Good, followed by Eric Lawrence, and then Michelle Ewing.
My name's Christina, Bellingham resident, and in my opinion, It's very obvious that someone in charge of the Sheriff's Department has a blatant disregard for the humanity of the inmates and the workers in the jail. The funds to fix the current jail need to be readily available because of the human rights issue that we have at hand. There are workers in the jail telling their children they won't come home if an earthquake were to happen, and this needs to be recognized as a problem with the management. I don't understand why we should trust their decision on where the jail should go, how big it should be when they can't even take care of what's right in front of them. I know that some people argue they want to build this bigger jail because of population growth. However, last time I checked, the population's been growing, and this isn't something new, yet the crime rate is still reported as being down. And it's totally backwards to be building a bigger jail, in my opinion. And it seems that my generation and the generation after me are what these so-called numbers are being based off of, and I personally refuse to believe that we're heading in the direction that we need 300 or 400 or 500 plus bed jails just to lock people up. Building a new jail outside of Bellingham would be a huge mistake, and we should not stand to allow that to happen. With this issue being reported as one of our county's most costly and important decision in regards to our future, we cannot allow this mistake to happen. Instead of parading community members through the jail to show them how bad it is, we need to focus our taxpayer dollars in a more cost-effective way. Honestly, we should be embarrassed that this is how the inmates and workers are being forced to live and work, and we should be ashamed of the person that we trusted to look after this situation. We need change, and building a bigger jail is not going to bring change. Thinking that a bigger jail in Ferndale will cause the management to take better care of the inmates and the workers would be a foolish thought and decision, especially when they can't even take care of the people in there right now. As a resident of Bellingham-Whatcom County, I would like to ask to have a public hearing in regards to any current or future proposed facility location. The taxpayers deserve to be heard, and the taxpayers deserve to have their say in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next is Eric Lawrence, followed by Michelle Ewing, and then Tip Johnson.
Hello. My name is Eric Lawrence. I'm a member of Socialist Alternative, a resident of Bellingham, and a student at Western. I wanted to speak today because I think that building this proposed new jail is a terrible idea for the people of Bellingham and Whatcom County. I think that diverting community resources towards building an unnecessary pseudo-prison is a move that is blatantly against what is in the best interests of the people. By trying to force through this new jail, the Whatcom County Council has revealed that they are siding against the ordinary people, the poor and the working class, the 99%. And they are siding with the interests of the prison industrial complex. And now you all, the Bellingham City Council, have a chance to stand against this. And if you claim to serve the interests of your constituents over the profits of the prison industrial complex, now's your chance to prove it. In order to address the real issue here, I think we need to take a step back and talk about what is actually necessary for a healthy, functional society. Putting people in cages isn't what is necessary. We should use our community resources to actually take care of our people, to give people who need help the help they need. That is what is necessary for a functional society. Things like affordable housing and healthcare, that needs to be the main focus of where we put our resources. Putting our resources into mass incarceration isn't going to help our community. It will just help rich people get richer by exploiting us, the working class and poor people of Whatcom County. So, no new jail.
Okay, thank you very much. Up next is Michelle Ewing, followed by Tip Johnson, and Hannah Fishman.
Hello, my name is Michelle. I was compelled to speak today because we do not need a mega jail in this county. I'm really concerned Two, because there's supposed to be, I read that there's supposed to be some mental health beds, and I feel like that would be the most terrifying thing to be in a crisis and be approaching the jail. And, you know, if these beds aren't for people who are in mental health crisis that aren't already in the system, I feel like that's kind of bad too, because, you know, when you're having a mental health crisis, it doesn't care what crime you have been accused of. You need to be able to have an emergency intervention if that's what you need. So we need to take that very seriously. I do support fixing the jail that we currently have. I don't think we need to dump a whole bunch of money into something that may face the same thing. How did it get this bad? 10 years of this conversation where is just considered inhumane. How are we going to avoid that if we don't already fix what we have? So I think that's all I have to say. I'm just very disappointed that we have to have this conversation.
Thank you, Michelle. Tip Johnson is next, followed by Hannah Fishman and then Lisa McShane.
My name is Tip Johnson. I live on the south side, have for a while. Thank you all for your patient ears and bright, sparkly eyes. It's nice to, and your wide latitude with the public comment period. Well, the jail issue's gotten me to a meeting, which as a recovering politician, I'm on a 12-point plan. Don't go to meetings, don't go to meetings. Don't. But I probably don't need to remind you, but budget lions eat budget lambs. And this jail is a ferocious lion, and I'm convinced that if we move ahead with the jail use agreement now, we're essentially writing a big blank check to the county to build the jail where, for whatever reason, without public process, they decided it was going to be in probably the second stinkiest hole in the county, downwind from everything bad except the refineries, and even them somewhat. For the county, we had a CPA run some numbers, and even before the price went up, it could feasibly bankrupt the county. So when I say, like, if we move ahead with the jail now, we may not have prevention and diversion and mental health. By the way, mental health has no place in a jail, mental health facilities. We may not even be able to have county parks and things like that. So getting to the right size jail in the right place is the right thing to do, and I just don't think that's been done. And I second the idea heard earlier that we have a public hearing on where the jail should be, because, you know, I'm not sure they're telling you all the straight scoop here. Like someone pointed out, they say the jail's overcrowded, but gee, they can't even give you a number. And they say the jail's a wreck, but gee, the 2000 jail task force report said it was, yeah, it has problems, but it's a good building built to last. It's like now it's going to fall down in an earthquake. I'm not sure that's really an accurate assessment. When I did a public disclosure request to see what kind of analysis they'd done of the building, they replied, well, we don't have any documents. So, you know, go figure. Furthermore, the very documents, federal documents that they use to build their rationale for a big flat rural jail, in fact, say, if you have room near the courthouse, that's where you should do it, because even if the capital costs are higher, the operational costs of going back and forth to a rural jail will soon outstrip any savings. Now, I'd just like to also point out that if any of the arguments they apply to the jail for moving it out there are true, well, let's just say the arguments they make for moving it out there apply equally and possibly more honestly to the courthouse. So if you want to see the county seat move out to Ferndale, I think that's going to cost a lot more than the jail. Thanks.
Thank you, Tip. Hannah Fishman is next, followed by Lisa McShane, and then Kaya Graham.
Hi, I'm Hannah Fishman, and I'm a member of the Bellingham Tenants Union. And I wanted to thank you all for having the town hall last week. So I'm here basically to reiterate, my call for a ban on source of income discrimination in this city. I think it's a really important first step towards making Bellingham more affordable for the majority of us who are in fact renters here. I think if homelessness is a priority of this city, then this is a key step to take to actually, help house people in a real and meaningful way. I mean, I know as a worker here, I have conversations literally every single day with, friends and people with whom I work about just how difficult it is to pay for housing in this city. It's, whether it's, illegal stuff that your landlords do, excess fees or not repairing things, or if it's just skyrocketing rents like over $100 between leases. These are things that really affect the population of this city and really affect the working class in the city. And I think it's time that the city council do something and continue doing more to help address affordability here and to stop the kind of property management company exploitation of us as citizens here. That's it.
Thank you, Hannah. Lisa McShane is next, followed by Kaya Graham, and then Joy Gilfillan.
Thanks. Greetings. Lisa McShane, Bellingham, and I'm here tonight representing only myself to ask that you vote no on the jail funding agreement. There's two things I want to tell you about. Number one, in 2011, I co-chaired Whatcom County's jail planning task force. One of our recommendations was regarding process. We hired Jay Farbstein, a national jail planning consultant, and he detailed for us and the county the right approach. I'm sorry to say that these recommendations were largely ignored, and here we are today with things significantly out of order. Number two, in October of 2016, Whatcom County released a report, the Design to Last report. It's an engineering study of the jail. We've been told for years that the jail's in disrepair and falling apart, and there are many opinions about the state of the jail, but prior to this report, I'm unaware of any engineering study. We're being asked to spend $110 to $130 million on a new jail, so we need more than opinions. I summarized the details of the report into 3 pages for you. I'll give that to you in a minute. I've also included as page 4 the report's conclusions and recommendations. The engineers said of our 2 jails that the downtown one is in fair to good condition and the Iron Gate one is in excellent condition. The downtown jail has deficiencies, but they are fixable. There's a maintenance backlog. The report states the building needs seismic upgrades, but says, quote, the infill concrete masonry unit walls that we observed were all in good condition. Concrete masonry units are usually sensitive to building movement and will show signs of cracking with even minor settlement or distortion. The concrete masonry unit walls we observed did not show signs of distress, end quote. I know this report is out of step with everything we have heard about the jail. This is the county's own report, and it says the jail is in fair to good condition and provides good ideas for reusing it. The executive summary claims a new jail is needed, but that statement is unsupported by the details in the report. The estimated cost to renew and maintain the 2 jails for 20 years, that's $32.4 million. $1.6 million a year. To me, that's worth considering. 2 years ago, you were pressured to put this on the ballot, and you declined. And then the voters agreed with you. That no allowed the Vera Institute to come in and do a study. It gave you a reason to do an excellent job at reducing incarceration. The delay was helpful, and it moved us all forward. Earlier, Councilmember Barker used a housing analogy and said you're being forced to choose between no housing or a house that's not the right fit. Maybe this is the affordable Rambler.
Thank you, Lisa. Kaya Graham's next, followed by Joy Gilfillan, and then I'll come back to that name. I can't.
Hi, my name is Kaya Gran. I'm a member of Socialist Alternative. I've grown up here, and I am currently going to Western as well as a preschool teacher serving low-income and at-risk kids. So, you know, this issue has come up earlier. This is not the first time we've heard about a jail, and I know I love Bellingham. This is where I choose to be, and hopefully will be able to continue to stay. We have a reputation that I really take pride in, a reputation of being progressive, of looking forward to the future and actually creating those things, as was evident in your previous vote, which I really appreciate and look forward to seeing more of. I also had the opportunity as a student at Western and at Fairhaven to actually take a tour of the jail to see not only the terrible conditions, but also the emotional trauma that people are going through. And it's heightened, not just because of a jail setting, but the idea of imminent death due to something that happens very regularly in our environment, an earthquake, of inhumane living conditions. These are not things that are acceptable, particularly in a town that prides itself on being progressive and taking care of people. I also want to bring to light, you know, the tragic murder of a black, allegedly mentally ill woman in Seattle, you know, just a couple of days ago or yesterday. We always say it won't happen here, it can't happen here, but what are we doing right now? We are preparing to build a mega jail. That sends the message that we are doing exactly what we shouldn't do. We're sacrificing our community and the lives of people in our community and surrounding us for who? For whose profit? And what are we doing this for? We have to actually look at what people in our current jail need: safe conditions, better treatment, and funding for mental health services. That's the primary goal. Not the primary goal, I'm sorry. We have to address mental health illnesses, homelessness, and the reason that people are being put in jail in the first place. Let's actually focus on, you know, funding services that will give people a better life and provide them with the opportunity to take care of themselves instead of landing them in a jail cell. I'm going to take a moment and see if I have anything less that I want to say before my timer goes off. I do. More than 30% of the Whatcom County inmates are people of color, but they only make up about 15% of our population. This is a racial justice issue as well as a human rights issue. We must, you know, to reduce crime, we must fund health services and affordable housing, solutions to homelessness, and rehabilitation programs. Otherwise, we can't claim to be what we are, and that would make me really ashamed to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Kaya. Up next is Joy Gilfillan, followed by, and I can't read it, so I'm pretty sure, Dean, it's you. Dean, I think you'll be after Joy.
My name is Joy Gilfillan, a resident of Bellingham and Whatcom County for many years. 2 years ago, the taxpayers said no. I testified then that we had no needs assessment. I was criticized for that, but standing here today, we still have no needs assessment. It's 2 years later, we still have no improved jail, and we don't have a plan to get her done. To me, after 7 years of studying on this, I'm going to say something that's probably politically or socially incorrect. I'm going to say that we need to have no con game allowed in Whatcom County any longer. We need to stand up for the public and the people that are having to pay the bills. We do not need a big tax to fix that jail. If you simply take people out of that jail at $108 a day, you can save a massive amount of money. That money can be recycled back into the city, into services and solutions. The City of Bellingham has done some amazing things recently with your electronic home monitoring and other things. I think we need to push the reset button. I think we need to step back, take it in order, get a needs assessment, do a public hearing on moving the county seat out of downtown. Because you know what? If you start moving the sheriff and all of his business out into the county, public defenders, business people know that the business follows that kind of movement. It is not right to not have a public hearing on what will happen to our civic core and our economic development in Whatcom County and in downtown Bellingham, and to all the jurisdictions and all the fiscal impacts of that. That has never been allowed, and we called for it in the EIS supplemental comments 7 years ago, 6 years ago. It's never been done, and all of our public comments and concerns from the final environmental impact statement were dismissed as outside the scope of planning to build a jail. Yes, it is, because we do not want to build a huge jail out in the county. We do not need a third jail. I'm asking the city of Bellingham to consider taking a very strong and very different approach. Stop negotiating with people who are not negotiating in good faith. Change contracts if necessary. Support the Yakima. Go to Skagit County. Do whatever it takes to make a good deal with good people who negotiate in good faith. You guys have a contract with the county. The sheriff said that it's his responsibility to house people in a humane condition. To me, that's a breach of contract with the city. Change partners if you have to. Build a new organization. Go out and do a city Department of Corrections and use the facility on Division Street to do recovery programs. You can do it. It will save you a lot of money, and it will save us taxpayers bankruptcy. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Dean Tuckerman, you're next, followed by Amy Malone, and then Amy Glasser.
As I said at County Council last week, if they build it, they will fill it. The jail, there already are 2 jails in Whatcom County. There's the one down the block, and then there's the one up. There's the one that they call a work release program, but it's a jail. They have space for people. And if they need to refit or refurbish the jail downtown, there are ways to do it without building this mega jail all the way up by Ferndale. Jail itself, I mean, logically, it'd be cheaper than building the jail for the city to bail out all the people that are not on violent crime. That would be cheaper than building the new jail. Most people, there are 2 kinds of people in our jail. One of them is people who are still innocent but can't pay their bail. The other one is people on minor misdemeanors, most of which don't even need to be in jail. There are many alternatives. There are experts that can speak to alternatives. I don't need to. But jail itself and the tax, it seems strange that bail and the tax that is going to fund this jail are both a penalty on poor working people. The tax is a regressive tax. All sales tax are regressive taxes. We need to not even think of a new jail. We need to think of the alternatives instead.
Thank you, Dean. Up next is Amy Malone, followed by Amy Glasser, and then Larry Hildes.
Thank you. My name is Amy Malone. I'm a born and raised Bellingham resident. This is my first time to council, and this afternoon, watching all of you deliberate and discuss this afternoon was very eye-opening, and I want to appreciate all of you that are seeking further information. I really appreciate that and your deep discussion of not just looking at the jail issue as just the jail and how much it's going to cost, but also considering the ramifications to our community and looking at programs like Mr. Hamley, Councilmember Hamley, were talking about programs that are working with children and their families that are going to prevent them from even going into the system, and how that's going to impact the future jail population downwards or upwards, and presumably it's going to be downwards, discussing trends on crime actually going down, how our housing crisis feeds into over-incarceration, hearing from the earlier presentation, town versus gown, and recommendations to be looking at the nuisance code to see if there are ways to make that less cumbersome and less punitive. And I think if we looked at other of our codes, both in the city and the county, and really examined how our, not just our incarceration records, but also looking at how people are arrested and what they are arrested for. Do they really need to be in jail? Are they a risk to society? Most of them are not. Most of them are, get rid of cash bail system that unduly affects the poor. Yeah, sorry, a little nervous. But again, I just wanted to say I really appreciated hearing all of you discussing and taking a stand. Councilmember Barker, you were saying that Bellingham is in a really tough position because either way, a big group of people is going to be really ticked off at you, whether it's the voters or it's the other legislative bodies and city bodies and such. And I get that. That's a tough position. But sometimes doing the right thing, you're standing alone and it's difficult. So I commend all of you for considering that and pushing back and making sure that you have the information that you need to make a good decision, and giving us, the voters, the opportunity to get that information as well. That bell just threw me off. I also wanted to thank you for wanting more stronger language to have in there, whatever you decide on, for funding, alternatives, diversions, mental health, substance abuse. All those are alternatives and prevention to incarceration and reducing recidivism. And I want to thank you for saying that Bellingham will take a firm stand on that regardless of how you vote. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Amy. Is Amy Glasser here? I don't see Amy Glasser, so we'll go on to Larry Hildes and then Karen Weil, and that'll be the end of our public comment period for tonight.
Thank you again, members of the council. Name is Larry Hildes. As I said, we live about 100 feet out of the city. If it was up to us, you would annex us. Because I'm very proud of this city. I'm very proud of what you all do. It's an interesting juxtaposition on these two issues that are up right now. On the one hand, the absolute need for affordable housing. On the other hand, the sheriff's office trying to get you all to, instead of spending the money on that, to shove a new jail down everybody's throat. I am a member of the National Lawyers Guild, have been for 2.5 decades. In 2015, the Guild took a position favoring the abolition of prisons. And at the time, we kind of grumbled. We were kind of shocked by that. How does this make us look? What's the point of this? There are people who need to be in prisons, and there are. But when you look at the criminal justice system, how it grinds people down, how it warehouses people who have problems that there are better ways to deal with, it was a really good statement of principle, and I've come around to it. At the very least, we do not need this new jail. I lived in California for many years and did some cases in Humboldt County. You drive into Eureka, which is the county seat of Humboldt County, the first building you see is the 7-story jail that they built in the 90s. It is the highest point in Humboldt County. It's the highest building built. What does that say about the county when the tallest building you've got is a jail? It certainly doesn't encourage tourism. Come to Whatcom County, end up in jail. And there's no justification for the numbers. If you look at these arguments about the population increasing, we have to be prepared for that. You know, and we know, that an awful lot of the population that's increasing is retired people. Nobody's retirement plan includes spending their golden years in jail. And these are not people who are likely to commit a lot of crime. There are humane solutions to this. It was a boondoggle to buy the land out on Labonte in the first place by the county. We need to not reward that. We need to keep what we need here, fix what we've got, or build something at a reasonable size, manage it properly, which is not happening now, and not build the extra bases. As Dean Tuckerman said, if you build them, someone will fill them. We need not to be in that business. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Our last speaker for tonight will be Karen Weil.
Thank you for pronouncing my last name right. My name is Karen Weil. That was my husband, so I also live, how far? 100 feet outside of the city line. And I also agree with Larry. We should be annexed. We're in that little portion that sticks out from Whatcom Lake, and it would make our internet much easier if we were. I had written a fairly long comment that I had made at the county council meeting last week, and I was going to repeat the highlights of that, and then started to think about it this afternoon, and I realized I want to say something a little different. When you begin to pull on the thread of incarceration, you find it is an issue that touches on every other civil rights issue out there. 73% of the folks in the county jail are there because they can't afford to pay the bail. I find that outrageous. As someone who works in the legal field, how can you work on your own defense from inside the jail? So the first issue it touches on is poverty, and through that, classism. Secondly, as we all know, racism is a huge issue throughout the legal system. I don't remember the numbers that the study from the Racial Justice Coalition came up with, but they showed that Whatcom County is no exception to that, with the number of people of color, Black, Latino, and Native American, way higher than the percentages in the county or in the city. Incarceration is also connected to problems in the education system, in homelessness, in mental health, and in drugs. When you step back and look at the overall picture, it is a picture of our society. Why would you believe something so complex can be solved with one answer? Just wave a magic wand, build a mega jail, and we'll solve all of our societal problems. It will only make things worse. A complex problem requires a better answer and better use of our taxpayer dollars. They're trying to draw you in with these 35 mental health beds. Several people have touched on the fact that they don't belong in a jail. We need to be investing in homes. We need to be investing in mental health homes, places where people can go and get help. And believe me, it's going to need more than 35 beds or 35 opportunities for people to get help. If 1552 was a no-brainer, then so is saying no to this. I don't want to become a prison county. We have a beautiful, beautiful place. We have lived here 15 years. It is the longest I have ever lived in one place in my entire life. I have done this very purposefully. I have done this very, very intentionally. Please don't let us become a prison county. Thank you.
Thank you for all your public comments tonight. That concludes the 15-minute public comment period
15
for this evening. We will now go on to do our regular business, which includes the reports from two committees. The first committee is the Planning and Community Development Committee, which met this morning at 10:30, and that's chaired by Councilmember Gene Knutson.
Thank you, Michael. We had one item on our Council Planning Committee this morning. With me on the committee is Council Members Barker and Hamill. We had our third work session on the residential renter barrier concerns.
Today we heard from Kim Heisinger and Lori Magi from Landmark Property Management. They gave us their perspective on what we were talking about and some of the other things we were considering. We talked about source of income discrimination. Mark Gardner gave us a report on what he has found so far. Joining us were Mayor Linville and Peter Rifato. We had a long and good discussion. We took some public comment. And our next work session, we will discuss it even further for possible action on the source of income discrimination. End of committee.
Thank you, Gene.
Oh, I should ask my fellow council members if they had anything else to say. April or Dan, you want to say anything?
So we're planning on bringing Kelly Owen from Northwest
that's right.
Justice Project to our July 10th meeting, as well as somebody to represent veteran housing assistance to understand that a little bit better as well. And our goal, if we can get it, is to hopefully have a recommendation for the full council after that meeting. So I'm not quite sure how we'll have to, maybe, I guess we'll bring our recommendation into the evening meeting. Yeah, so it's been going really well. And I think with that, I wanted to ask the council if I could work with Marie and Mark to see if we can't put in current issues on our New City, we have a webpage there. People are having a really difficult time kind of navigating our system whenever we want them to follow a certain, like jail. They have to go back to all of these different links to try to figure out exactly where we talked about jail. Maybe we talked about it in the mayor's report. Maybe we talked about it in a specific committee. So as a pilot, I wanted to work on it with this rental barriers and concerns, where we could have all of the tapes, basically. I'm saying tapes. That's so old. I'm sorry. I'm 42. So we could have all of the videos linked there with all of the paperwork that has been distributed. And then hopefully as people come into the conversation, we'll see if that won't be an easier way for them to see that. It won't take very much time. I've already spoken with Mark and Marie. They're open to doing it, but I didn't want to move any further with that pilot until I talked to it.
Second.
Okay.
So for the public as well as for the rest of
Yeah.
the committee, the hot topics section has been added to the City Council's webpage as part of our general communication efforts, and I think this is exactly a perfect reason for us to have that hot topics section so that we can pull together areas that are of current discussion. So I think that's exactly what that section was intended for. Is there any? Okay. I'm seeing unanimous agreement. Go ahead and work with Mark. And you suggested doing that on both the housing issue and maybe even the jail issue?
Well,
I think jail may already be up there as a hot topic.
Well, the jail is there, but see, we've had so many different conversations at different points in meetings that people who like just now learn about this issue, they'll come and they'll only maybe watch this or even be directed to watch this. And we've been having these conversations since I got on council.
Right.
So, I mean, there's potential that we could see how this goes and then find out other issues that are really important. So whenever I'm talking to a constituent on the bus, I can hand them my card and send them a really fast link where if you want to come up to PACE on rental barriers and concerns, just click this button and it will lead you to every place and every video that you need to look at. So it could be the same with the jail or other things.
So this is new, this area, but I'm gonna ask for your help and the help of the public, that if you see that there's an area that maybe we should now create a new hot topic section and what content should be there, our staff will need that suggestion, bring it to the council. I think we can do it pretty quickly. And again, similarly, if members of the public think that we actually have created a hot topic and not yet recognized it as such and brought together the information, come to us, email us, and we'll consider doing that. It's really what the web needs to be, that two-way communication format. So thank you for bringing that up.
I think it's just important to note, too, that we passed a motion today to have our planning committee continue its work with the affordable housing. So currently we're working on the operations piece, which involves source of income discrimination, rental fees, other things like that. But we understand that we need to be having a parallel dialogue with the affordable housing and what are the barriers that we currently have that we could remove and what are some innovative ways that we could look at, and we'll be bringing that to council as soon as we finish with that. So that'll be a lot of our summer work, I think.
Any further discussion on the planning committee meeting? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to report the work of the committee of the whole.
Did we not just have a motion there?
Well, I saw no disagreement, so if there's unanimous
I
consent and no objection, it's a de facto motion. Was there any objection to that? Seeing no objection, it's passed. Thank you, Pinky. We had six items, I think it was, 6 items before the Committee of the Whole. The first item was the discussion of the Town and Gown Implementation Strategy. We received an overview of the partnership between Washington University and the city to reduce conflicts between students and neighborhoods through education and increased coordination. The two entities have developed an implementation strategy, which is in our packet, to address items of concern for our communities relating to some of the common challenges faced by university towns. The staff provided an overview of the actions. There are, I think, 12 action items indicated in the plan, 13, and they're divided into topics having to do with litter, like, for example, leaving couches out on the curb when you move out, parking and traffic issues, housing-related issues, nuisance issues, noise, litter, parking problems also, and specifically issues having to do with noise and parties. There were several recommendations for both short-term and mid-term and also ongoing operations. If you're interested in more, you can go online and find that implementation strategy. That was for information only. Several of the recommended action items would actually require city council action to change a law or something, and when those things are ready, they'll come forward and the city council will consider them. The next item was a discussion of our annexation phasing plan. The annexation phasing plan was last updated in 2009. This is basically a study of all the areas, the growth areas on city limits that are slated for review for possible annexation. In this initial meeting, staff provided an overview of the ongoing work going back to 2009 forward on the annexation phasing plan. The overview included background information, a summary and maps of all the urban growth areas, and a discussion of the issues that are associated with the areas and next steps. For example, there's over 5,200 acres around the city which are part of our urban growth areas. 1,000 of that, however, is the airport and won't ever be annexed. As Mr. Alcott described today, there's roughly a group on the western side and the eastern side, and if you characterize them, they're actually quite different. The eastern side is near Lake Whatcom, actually has already substantial residential development and actually very low or limited capacity for commercial or residential growth. There's complicated by the fact that the people who live there may not want to be annexed, and which leaves an urban area not inside a city, which is a planning problem. The western areas are characterized by lower density and with much greater capacity, not only for residential development, particularly for commercial and industrial development to support job opportunities. This was also for information only. The third item was a review of the public director's decision denying a request for retail water service on city limits. On March 27th, the City Council reviewed a denial of a request for water and sewer service from owners of a property located at 1323 Mount Baker Highway, which is just outside city limits. Staff recommended denial of the request because we have a long-standing policy. We no longer extend utility services beyond city limits, especially when you kind of have to leapfrog to the property. So no decision was made at that time because we tabled it because the City Council saw a problem in the fact that we had to reject service. Part of that problem had to do with the annexation phasing plan you just heard about. In years past, we actually extended water service outside the city. When we stopped doing that, we left a patchwork of areas that had city service and not city service. And this was one of those properties that was in the not city service area. So they're very unfairly situated, I think was the sentiment, and we wanted to figure out ways to deal with that. So we did not deny the request, neither did we approve it. Staff went back, worked with the property owners, they came up with an annexation option. So the legitimate option might be to annex that property and the intervening properties that would meet all the needs for the owners of the service and would not require the council to suspend or overturn our utility extension policy. This afternoon, the City Council provided direction to staff to go ahead and proceed with the annexation proposal, and that'll come forward at a future date. The fourth item was Waterfront Implementation Status Report. Staff have been working with the Port of Bellingham on refinements to the interlocal agreement for facilities within the waterfront district. This was part of the master planning process we did several years ago for the waterfront. Under that agreement, if the refinements are minor, staff can make them without City Council approval. Staff decided these refinements were indeed minor, but nonetheless they're important for us to present to the City Council. The City Council is informed of these changes, along with changes in other agreements between the Port and Harcourt, their chosen developer, and the Port and Western Crossing, which is a development authority associated with the university. The primary goals of the refinements are to accommodate 3 waterfront residential buildings for Harcourt along Whatcom Waterway, provide an unencumbered easement for the city for the first phase of Waypoint Park, that's the name of the new park along the waterway, Waypoint Park, and to adjust Western Crossing location to support adaptive reuse of the board mill building by Harcourt. I think the thing that I would like to suggest people do is go online and look at the map. I think it's much easier, 1,000 words, to explain how things are going. I think the important thing to communicate is that these changes, there's no change in the acreage devoted to parks or any other use. There's no change in the financial commitments, either by the city or by the port, and there's no change in the timing of the phasing of the projects. There's changes in boundaries and borders. That also was for information only. I'm going to take a little drink of water. Okay, we're reaching the climax in the plot. The fifth item was the interlocal jail financing and use agreement. The jail facility financing and use agreement describes the financial agreements, including the use of a sales tax and the cost allocations of each participating jurisdiction. The JFFUA also describes the uses of the proposed facility as well as certain operational aspects of the existing facility, the existing jail. On Tuesday, May 30th, the Whatcom County Council affirmed the size of the bed at 440 beds, plus or minus, as previously described, and that 440 is in addition to, I think, around 35 beds set aside for medical or mental health reasons. To make it clear, those beds are for people who are already in jail who then have medical and mental health needs, and they would be transferred to a different facility if this jail was built. At a previous meeting, the City Council tabled the jail facility use agreement. Tabling means we just put it aside and don't act on it. This afternoon, we did nothing to remove it from the table. It still lies at the table, but we had a rather long discussion. And I'm not sure what we want to do tonight. We can continue that discussion, but right now there was no action, no recommendation in the council of the whole. Gene.
I just want us to read something before we do anything. I know we decided this afternoon to wait, but I want everybody to turn to page 112, the third bullet down, where it reads, if any city listed and intended as a party to this agreement fails to approve and execute this agreement by June 30th, 2017, the county may reduce the size and scope of the projects, including a reduction of jail beds and medical and behavioral health facility beds. This may commiserate with the non-participating city's actual and expected share for the annual payment for the new jail. So I just bring that up. That's another hurdle that we have in front of us, not only not going along with this and the county do what they do, but this throws another twist in it, and I just wanted to bring that up tonight.
Yeah, I discussed this issue with Mr. Rufato, the city attorney. And I'll let you speak, his assessment was that it doesn't require the county to reduce their jail and leave us out of it, but it is indeed a legal risk that possibility is genuine and has been indicated. I don't know, Mr. Rufato, if you want to add anything to that. Kelly.
Well, I wanted to correct something I said that was in error. I was feeling kind of passionate, so it's August 1st that it has to be on the ballot. So technically, it isn't a legal requirement that we do it. I mean, it's a contractual requirement, but legally, state law says, or county law says, by the 1st of August, not the 30th of August. So I just thought I'd let you know that.
Mr. Rufato?
Yeah, I would like to say that clearly, as communicated in this agreement with the executive putting this in front of the county council, and they're voting in favor of this, even if it was 4-3, that is where I would interpret the county's position, that if we don't sign it by that date, they may choose then to fashion a proposal that excludes the city. That's a clear risk.
Pinky? Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
Well, and I agree with Peter that is how it's written out. If you send questions to the county and they decide to consider some of them and make adjustments in this agreement, they could also make the adjustment on the date. So.
Pinky?
I was just going to say, I think that maybe we should expand a little bit on why we tabled it and what we came up with this afternoon. I believe we had 4 issues on the table that we said we would like answers from. And so I think maybe we should state those so people know what we've asked for. And then I also had a little bit of time to think this afternoon, and I want to add something else.
Well, so let me go ahead and say two things. One, I wrote down notes on the areas that we appear to have agreement of issues and requests we want to send back to the county. I will try to read those. In addition, Mr. Rufato has tried to write a memo to summarize some of those in slightly different language. I haven't had a chance to look at that, but it may be that the issues as identified here might be embedded in a framework as Mr. Rufato has suggested, but I don't have that yet. So one of the issues that we emphasize in a number of different ways is that we want more clarity and specifics, and also what kind of commitments there exist on incarceration reduction, mental health programs, the alternatives, the diversions. We were asking for that piece to be more clearly spelled out. I'm not sure how you put it, April. You
solidify an immediate plan for greater mental health and substance abuse programs.
Yeah, solidify an immediate plan. So that was one of the areas that we wanted to go back to the county with. What, can we solidify the plans on those alternatives and have to do with incarceration reduction? We also identified questions having to do with uncertain cost elements. Some elements in the JFFUA have no price tag attached to them. That was one of the other areas that we brought up. And that was also tied to the holding facility and the Sally Port. And that's one of the things that Mr. Rufato put, I think he put pretty well in his draft memo. We like the council, the Whatcom County Council, to address concerns regarding the Sally Port and holding space. The City Council may consider requesting a modification or improvements to the JFFUA to state that the city's financial contribution to demolition of the existing jail and construction of a holding space in Sally Port is contingent upon at least the ability of parties to develop and agree upon to a design and operational plan that will allow all parties to utilize holding space for booking and other functions. That's a lawyer's way of saying we need a booking facility. If you're going to take the jail away from us, we need to still be able to book, because otherwise we have enormous operational concerns. Mr. Rufato.
Do you want me to, I haven't passed this out to everyone.
Yeah, I don't know, because I haven't had a chance to really read it either. We might as well hand it out now, but I don't know if we can act on it. We also identified as an area of concern, whether or not it's negotiable or not, a location. Majority of the city council members remain concerned about the location. I don't know if that's unanimous. That location issue does tie to the booking facility. And then on the issue of size, rather than having a specific request or number, what I heard from this council is that we found it difficult for ourselves to determine what might be the appropriate number, and that raised a question in our mind: how does the county come to its determination of the appropriate number, particularly given our emphasis and many people's emphasis on incarceration reduction, on diversion, on all the preventive programs that might affect the jail population? How does that factor into their calculations? And then I also have a note about, which I think I need some help on pre-trial prioritization for all jurisdictions. I forgot who raised that issue. And yeah, maybe you could help us to understand what that issue is so I can have better note.
Well, Peter's helped me to see inside the agreement where hopefully we should be able to have our pretrials. We should be treated the same as everybody else. And I think that's the most difficult part is we've been required to take out when there's booking restrictions or overcrowding, we're sending our pretrial, which I don't know if people understand what that is, but that's people who haven't been to trial yet. They haven't been convicted of anything, and very quickly we're asked to put them in a van and get them across the mountain to another jurisdiction. So it's just been extremely difficult, and I want there to be very clear language that from this moment forward, that is happening and in perpetuity, that if we have to take out our pretrial, then everybody else has to take out their pretrial as well.
And I think that is in the JFUA. Are you satisfied now?
No, I think that although we've had an email from the sheriff saying that he's going to do that, I want that in the agreement, that's just completely inappropriate. I need to know that that's going to happen from here and then the next 5 years, while hopefully we'll have better decision on.
You're looking for assurances on that issue.
Assurances.
Okay.
Yes.
So those are the issues we identified, and Pinky, you said you wanted to introduce possibly another.
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to address, April, you're saying immediately on pretrial, regardless of how we move forward. Is that what you're asking? I just wanted to clarify that point. Okay, so one of the things that we all agree on is that things are out of order in this jail process, and we're just trying to do the best that we can with the things we're allowed to do as it presents ourselves. In things being out of order, the things we hear over and over and over again is about a needs assessment. We don't know. We don't know what our needs are. We don't know what our changes are. The fact that we get billed for beds, but we don't have any data on who's actually in the jail and what we're paying for. It seems crazy that we don't know at all times exactly who's in the jail and why. And this seems to be something that I would think in today's day and age should be one of the easiest things to solve. And what I'm proposing is that we learn from the county and the sheriff what we need to get data. Their system is antiquated, they're understaffed. What kind of software do we need so that everybody who goes in and out of that jail is accounted for? We know why they're there. And that seems to me should be an easy fix. And I don't know what do we need to get from them to say, because if we build a jail out there, we can take the computer out there. We can fix this right now. Whatever it takes, there's got to be enough money right now to figure out what kind of system we need to upgrade it. I think we could do this with an iPad and an Excel spreadsheet, so it can't be that hard. So my request is that we learn from the county what it will take to have accurate data as soon as possible so we can know exactly who's in the jail and why and for how long. That's my request.
I'm seeing some nods. I don't know if I'm...
Yeah, fine.
That sound good to the rest of you? Okay, we'll add that request to the list.
That's fine. I'm just going to make a statement. I keep going back to this, but again, I'm just going to go by the words that were listed. We could spend a lot of time on this, but I don't think it's worth it, because I think what's going to happen is he's going to reject everything that we asked for. I'm saying that. I haven't been told that. I'm just saying he's made public comments that he's gone the gamut on this, and if we don't agree with it, it's over. So then we go to the next step. But he'll have to make that decision himself. But I just don't think we ought to spend a whole bunch of time. I think the list that you have, and if you want to add that to it, that's fine, but I wouldn't keep our hopes up too high. He made that perfectly clear at our last task force meeting. And I don't want to keep bringing that up, but by God, I'm still going to stand up for what we did and the work we did on that task force till it's all over one way or another, because it wasn't easy, and it is what it is. And but I just think if we make too long of a list, it'll just be soundly rejected.
April and then Terry.
Well, I'll say what I'm going to say. Yeah, so I'm assuming that I haven't studied how their government works, but much like ours, that even if the mayor disagrees with what council wants, we give direction. We have a lot of power and a lot of strength if we can get together as a council and figure out what it is that we want to do and direct our staff to do that, direct the mayor to work with the staff and make that happen. So I don't think that these requests are for the executive. My understanding is we are sending these requests over to the county and asking them to present some leadership, work together, and make sure we get these things back in order.
Which they haven't showed any leadership yet.
I'm not trying to be backhanded to our council. I really am not.
I am.
Please.
Well, that's the way that it works. And so even if the county executive says, I don't care, I don't want to do this, and I don't want to work with Bellingham, if they direct him to do what they want him to do, he has to do it. That's how it works. So I want to be clear that we're sending whatever we end up with to the council, and from council to council, we're asking for some help and some guidance and some leadership on this.
Terry?
Yeah, I looked at Peter's memo here, and I really like the wording that he has put in here regarding, especially A on this about to address size, timing, and alternatives to incarceration. City Council may consider requesting modification of the JFFUA to state that the County Council will determine the size of the new jail only after, and listing those things, because I know that's what some of the County Council members are currently requesting, of leaving that size out until they get the other figures that come in. Move forward with some of these planning parts of it and things, and so I really like the wording on this, and I could definitely go with this.
Dan?
I don't think anything that this council asked for this afternoon is unreasonable at all. I think that what we're asking for is clarification and facts and data when possible. So much of this agreement has been built on what I would characterize as foregone conclusions: sales tax, foregone conclusion; location, foregone conclusion; size, relatively foregone conclusion. I wouldn't buy a toaster oven based on this line of thinking, and I certainly am not prepared to spend the money that's being asked of taxpayers for this facility. If you look at just the Bellingham only, what we're on the hook for the life of the 30-year agreement, if you add in per diems and you add in capital costs, it's $91 million for the city of Bellingham. So that's obviously a lot of money, and it's investments that we're not making otherwise in mental health, significantly in mental health, illness treatment, or substance use disorder. And I think we've gone over this and over this, and I'm going to limit what I'm going to say right now because I think I've made my position clear. That we need to look at the things that contribute to why people end up in that facility. We need to look at the people and how they interact with that system. So I think that what we're asking for is not unreasonable.
Roxanne?
The thing that we needed the last time that we dealt with this is the same thing that we need this time: information. That was what we did this afternoon. Thankfully, the mayor helped us because we can push pause on this. And we need to get that information to make the most informed decision, not just on behalf of our citizens, but so we can sleep at night, so we can have better days for our people, so that we won't be recklessly incarcerating people when people need to heal. We need to recover from historical trauma as people of color. And one way we can do that is just try to get that information with the best of our ability, with the authority that we have on behalf of our community. And I hope that'll get us to a better place. But if it doesn't, I'm not game.
April?
So, and I don't want to sway our conversation, but I meant to ask this earlier today. In watching all the conversations across the street, there were many times, and I need a little bit of institutional knowledge here, there were many times that the county council members, and I think the executive as well, mentioned the Division Street, and then the things that our own council, our city council, put maybe wording that there were certain things, maybe it wasn't supposed to stay there for a long time. And so they were using that in the argument that we got to get out of that Division Street facility. So if there are languages out there that maybe a past council did, we could correct that with this council so it's not putting, because they're looking at something that we wrote and we did and we made decisions, not this exact body, but at least, you know what I'm saying? So I need help in understanding that institutional knowledge of what is sitting there that's motivating and guiding them saying these things, and if that's something our council can change, I think that could be really valuable to this discussion. You have the institutional knowledge. Please present it to us.
Okay, so when the city sold that property to the county for the interim jail facility, I think there were concerns that was not wanted to be a permanent location for the jail, and then when a new jail was built, it would no longer be used as a correctional facility. So in the purchase and sale agreement, it states that when a new jail is built, that would no longer be used as a correctional facility, but as the party to that contract, the city can choose not to. The city can choose to waive that provision in the contract. I think that's what I believe that's probably what you're talking about.
And so to do that, we make a motion to waive that in the agreement, so that, I guess.
We could make a motion to state tonight that we're open to changing that. We don't have to
Okay.
change it tonight.
Or get more information on it. It comes up almost every time they have the discussion on the jail.
I think you want more context before you try to take some sort of action. I don't know if the county if that's a major issue right now, then that should be a discussion between the city and the county. And then once it's sort of fleshed out, then you could take some action as appropriate.
Yeah, I think that it would behoove this council to get more of that information, because if that's being part of what's motivating some of these decisions, then we need to get some clarity on that and then make some decisions on. So they have what this council would like in that direction.
And I'll defer a little bit to Dan on this too, but when I sit in those alternative meetings, I hear that there's some facility out there that we're going to be using for the triage center.
Are you asking me?
I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, it's unclear to me what the 1616 co-located facility, if that's going to be within the existing, retooled to be within the existing facility, or if it needs to be a new structure.
So I was at that facility just this afternoon in the company of 2 county council members, and they seem to be of the impression that it could be repurposed and might be ideally repurposed as the triage center. That's at least that was not an official statement, but that is at least what one county council member was talking about. So there's various understandings on that facility. Dan?
And given the price tag that is associated with the proposed triage, what is it, $8 million?
Brian, why don't you?
That doesn't sound like new building to me. That sounds like repurposing.
Right. So the triage facility is like a significant piece of the whole puzzle.
Right.
Yeah.
Brad Heinrich, Mayor's Office. Whatcom County is working on a funding model with the state legislature. It's a capital budget request to get some dollars to repurpose that existing Division Street facility into a mental health triage facility. We've supported that. That was part of our legislative ask that we've been talking to folks in Olympia about for about 8 months now. Obviously, that's going to be contingent upon having a new facility that would take the activities that currently happen at Division Street facility and transfer them out to the proposed site.
Yeah, so that's the difficulty. If the triage facility is to be located where the work center is, and the work center won't close until the new jail is open, then the triage facility waits several years until the jail is finished.
But I think that it's not fully utilized.
I was out there today, and according to Caleb, they feel that they use it about as much as they can. Their operational difficulties have to do with who they can put in cells with who. These aren't small cells. These are like big dormitory style. So they have operational concerns, which they feel means they cannot run it at 100% occupancy.
I personally believe that what Peter said about us being part of the agreement about what happens to it means, as this stuff all falls out, that we can make a request that we want. I don't think right now any of us could say what we think it should be. But I do think that we could say that we think it should be determined, or something, without getting too particular or too specific about it before we decide. I know I talked to somebody, not Caleb, but someone else who works out there, who had a different opinion. So, we don't want to go on anecdotal information to make the decision. But I agree. I personally think we've paid for that building, and we should use it for something that we need it for in the criminal justice social service arena.
I guess I would like to say that I agree with a number of people who said that there's one of the main problems with this whole discussion is that things are out of sequence. and that decisions are being made before information is available, that commitments to a jail are made before equivalent commitments are being made to all the alternatives and pretrial diversions and preventive and treatment programs that affect who goes into jail and why they go into the jail. That's out of sequence in my mind. And that also goes to one other thing, which is out of balance. It's out of balance when we deal with the jail aspect without dealing with the other aspects as well. So out of sequence, out of balance, then also out of time. We're under this somewhat manufactured schedule that has to do with the deadline for putting it on the ballot in November. And I understand that was one of the things that was discussed long ago, that this November deadline and therefore the August deadline is no surprise. But all of those issues, out of sequence, out of balance, and out of time, can be fixed simply by delaying the ballot measure, which is what I would ask the county council to do, while we work on establishing the programs that reduce incarceration rates and answer the unanswered questions. So to me, it's all going to the county council to say, you really shouldn't put it on the ballot yet. It's not ready because there are unanswered questions. Things are out of sequence. So that to me is one of the pieces that I've been talking about with county council members. No one that I know of is against a safer and better jail, built or rebuilt. But this August 1st deadline, which to them is then a July meeting deadline, which to us then is a June 30th deadline, is a problem. To address what Jean was saying, we have no meetings between now and June 30th.
But you could have.
If we wanted to take action, we have two options open to us: to call a special meeting, which requires, I think, 7 to 10 days notice, or an emergency meeting, which requires even less notice. These are extraordinary measures. I am not the least bit suggesting them. What I am saying is I don't like the clock, and I don't want to respond to the clock. I want to respond to the problem.
Can I make a suggestion, Michael? Because I think we can go down a rabbit hole here and get and not focus on the issues that you're trying to identify that are important to be included in the agreement. And I think it would be important to focus on those first, send those to the county council through the county executive as soon as possible, and use a process to figure this out. And the county council is quite capable, I believe, of saying we like these ideas or we don't, but if we do like them, then we might need more time. I think there's an order here that will make it less confusing and more clear to the council that we're not getting into all the mechanisms over here. These are the things that are important to you, and these are the things that you believe should be included in the agreement. And I guess I would just say, from my experience, that would probably be the clearest way to do that. You can have all the discussions you want with your peers, and in the end, that might be a suggestion that we want to make. But I guess my request is, since I told Jack we were going to give him things we wanted in the agreement, that we come up with the things that we would like to see in the agreement, and that I give him that information to share with the county council.
So you're saying tactically and procedurally it would be better to suggest amending the agreement rather than find another mechanism?
Well, maybe that will come out of the end of it, but I don't think that any of us right here can assume we know what that might be. Sometimes things happen because there's an aha moment. Sometimes they happen because it just makes sense. So I guess I'm talking about if I were on, I'm thinking if I'm on the county council, I want to know if you have hesitations about voting for this, what is it that you are suggesting needs to be changed? That is the simplest thing to give to the county council. They can decide if those are things that they're willing to put in the agreement or not. It is true, and I think that's at the bottom of Peter's memo, that if we change things in the agreement, then we have to go to all the other cities. So, but I think first, we should know if the county council is even willing to consider some of the things that you've all talked about today.
Terry?
Yeah, I really agree with what the mayor's got to say. Let's be concise, make those points with those questions. Yes, there is that deadline that they could pull the trigger on, but why would they want to when we're asking for, here's some things we're looking at to try to make the decision to go along with it. I don't think that they're going to pull the trigger and say, oh, no, we're just going with this smaller thing, because they still have to pass it through the citizens of Bellingham to pass it. And they're not, so let's just, we had a fairly concise list this afternoon. Let's put that together, send it over, see if we can get the answers, and see if maybe it will sway one more vote on the county council. That's all it takes. And we might have an agreement we can get behind.
Any further discussion? There's no motion before the city council right now. There's no action being considered. Okay, shall we move on? Well, we already have a list of items that I believe we've already agreed we were going to convey to the
Yes,
county
okay.
council.
So Peter's going to finish
Well,
that. And
Peter's memo seems to provide a good framework. There are a few more elements I think we're adding to that memo that we just discussed. You and I can get together and look at that. I suggest we actually run a draft by the council before we send it out, though.
I'll sit down if you want to do that.
And that will occur with the council when? We'll be running the draft.
Okay, so you're worried about a public meetings issue? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they could either pre-authorize it and not look at it. I don't know. We don't have a final draft yet, so we can't approve anything.
Michael, I don't know, or council, are you comfortable giving Michael permission? We've had the discussion. He knows, Peter's listened to what we've heard.
I've listened
The two of them sit down
Ellie.
tomorrow, put it together. I trust Peter.
Tomorrow?
To be able to, he heard what we had to say. I trust that, and I think he'll hold Michael's words in, so, it'll be concise.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect?
So I make a motion that we give permission for Michael and Peter to put together a memo based on our discussion to send over for the mayor to give to Jack and copy
And the
going
county
to the
council.
county council.
Second.
The motion is to direct the county council president and the city attorney to draft a memo outlining the questions and the concerns discussed by the meeting and convey that to the county council at our next possible convenient moment. Is that it? How's that sound, Elizabeth? Thank you. All those any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? I should have abstained. Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you very much for that discussion. I believe we have one final item which has to do with housing affordability. We had a city council discussion on June 13th about our June 13th town hall. The city council at that meeting invited community members to participate in a town hall regarding housing, where a panel first presented and then responded to questions, and then the council heard public comment. And today the council discussed the results of that town hall. The reviews were happily very favorable. The motion was made this afternoon to refer the policy issues raised in these questions and raised at that meeting to the planning committee, probably for its second July meeting or sometime in July, and then also to have the planning staff to respond to some of the factual questions that were raised at that event. We do indeed have two meeting minutes for approval tonight. These are meeting minutes for June 5th and for May 22nd. Are there any changes or corrections to those meeting minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. There was no old and new business this afternoon. Is there any now? Dan.
I just want to let council know that I'll be going to the Association of Washington Cities Conference this week. I have an agenda. It has to do with online sales tax for online sales. So a purchase that's made in the city, the tax money goes to the county. That's our money. I'm going to get it back. So I'll be working with other cities on trying to figure out how to do that.
Anything else under old and new? Mayor's report.
Three things. First of all, I am reappointing Jean Milius to the Historic Preservation Commission. I need your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the reappointment of Jean Milius to the Historic Preservation Commission. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Jean is approved.
I'm glad you're going to AWC because our own Brian Heinrich is getting an All-Star Award, an advocacy award for his work on the Matka issue that he's been representing our community very well on, and also just for his strategic outreach to the other elected officials, representatives, and other going to the small cities meetings, and he's been very involved. So I told him I was announcing that tonight. So Dan will be there to
Keep an eye on him.
No, that isn't what I was thinking. I was thinking I would applaud him when he gets his award because I won't be there. I also wanted to say I've enjoyed sitting on the planning committee meetings. It reminds me of being in the legislature and actually having a work session in a committee hearing where you're talking to somebody. You don't have a preconceived notion about what the answer is, but you're actually looking at what the answer could be. And I want to say thank you to Jean as the chair, and April for organizing it, and Dan for participating. I like it. Finally, we have had a suggestion that in our boards and commissions, we use the word citizen, and we have had a request to change the word citizen to resident of Bellingham. I don't have an objection to doing that for boards and commissions. And so I was going to bring that up to you. I wanted to know kind of what the council thought before I might have something written that would do that. We have 33 openings on our boards and commissions, and maybe we need a broader group of people that would be eligible to participate. There's a part of me that had said that's kind of the first step into maybe running for office or doing something like that. But the truth is they're recommending bodies that the diversity on the bodies make the recommendations that they make better. So you don't have to decide tonight, but I just wanted to bring that up, that was something that I had been asked to do, that I was considering doing it. And if anyone wants to have further comments about it or has any objections or support, if you could just let me know, and then I can bring something forward for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's a great idea. I was recently brought some other information about our boards and commission, and I think this might be an appropriate time, is that we ask people to have been a resident of Bellingham for 3 years. And yet you can serve on the city council if you've been here a year. So maybe that is something else we should look at. Maybe, I don't know why it's 3 years, but it seems to me if you've lived in Bellingham for a year and you want to serve on a board of commission, you should be allowed to do so. And that might broaden it up. And that was the League of Women Voters who brought that to my attention.
April?
I think it's I'm trying to remember the group that Samia works with that does the consolidated plan, is going to be looking at
CDAB?
Yes. So I was in a meeting of theirs and they had these very same conversations. So I wonder if you would reach to them. They had some real specific recommendations of things to change.
Was it Jen you said?
The Community Development Advisory Board is the one that was brought up.
Yeah. So anyhow, they were having those conversations inside that meetings, and they had a few recommendations. So maybe Sammy would remember what those were. But yeah, I totally agree. I think removing barriers, making sure that we have a very broad perspective is key. And I'm so glad that you brought this forward. So thank you.
My understanding is that for sometimes in the past we've required that board members must be residents of Bellingham, but we actually changed that for some of the boards, like I think for the Watershed Advisory Board, to allow people who aren't residents but nonetheless are important key stakeholder experts. So we've even relaxed the residency requirement if we thought it improved membership. For example, someone who runs a business, for example, in a tourism trade may not live in Bellingham, but they may be the sort of person we would appoint to the Lodging Tax Advisory Commission, right, because their business is in Bellingham. So again, I think our residency requirement is a good one, but I think we can be overly strict. So yes, please look at it.
Okay, and I think that the preference is obviously to have someone who lives in Bellingham and has lived here at least a year and is somewhat familiar with the city. On the other hand, we can always make exceptions, and that I know I've made exceptions on the Lake Whatcom committee.
Dan.
I just wanted to confirm my support for what you're talking about in terms of the resident versus citizen, and then the support Councilmember Vargas's 1-year requirement versus the 3-year requirement.
Anything else?
Yep, I kind of agree with that. I think it's fine. I do think, though, that being a resident of Bellingham is important that we keep that in unless there are special circumstances, because it is about Bellingham.
And I agree with you, Terry. I think that's important to me too.
Anything else for your report?
So I guess I don't need to hear from you again on that. I heard. Thank you.
Okay, consent agenda.
Approval. Second.
All those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, under final considerations, there were 2 items that have to do with comp plan amendments. Under state law, we approve comp plan amendments once a year, and there's a 3rd comp plan amendment that's not ready yet. So we'll delay 3rd and final on those 2 items until that 3rd one does or doesn't come forward, which leaves us with only 1 item for final consideration.
Agenda Bill 21637, an ordinance amending the 2017-2018 adopted budget recognizing $9,868,874 property tax revenues in the Greenways Fund, appropriating a portion for capital maintenance and increasing ending reserves.
Move third and final.
Second.
We have a motion before us to approve the ordinance. Roll call, please.
Terry Borneman.
Aye.
Dan Hamel.
Aye.
Gene Knutson.
Aye.
Michael Lillquist.
Aye.
Roxanne Murphy.
Aye.
Pinky Vargas.
Aye.
April Barker. Ordinance passes 7-0.
Is there any more business for the Sitting Council? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.